Welcome back in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here. That's John McMullen. I'm Zander Krause, now prepping for week 3, coming off a tough Monday night football loss. Eagles 1-1 going into the week 3 matchup. The game is Sunday. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time. Back to a NFL type of schedule in New Orleans. Johnny Mac, what's your first thoughts as we come into that game? That team is red hot, 2-0, just destroyed Dallas. In Dallas. Just your early thoughts right now as you think about that game as a whole.
Yeah, the NFL has a way to, put a tough challenge when you might be down a little bit. This is a very difficult place to play. Very difficult place to play in general. It is extremely loud. Especially obviously when the Saints are good, and they're off to this start, so people are going to be fired up. It's not the type of place where Eagles fans, it's a great city that fans want to travel to, but it's not one of the easier stadiums to take over. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of Eagles fans that find their way in, but it's not going to be that situation where Eagles fans can take over a stadium, especially with the Saints playing so well. So I do think the environment's going to be really difficult. And then you just look at the matchup from the standpoint of it's a very explosive team, and it's probably going to be a shootout in a dome, the fast field, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if the Eagles are equipped to win a shootout without A.J. Brown. I think they're always equipped to win a shootout with A.J. Brown, but I think you've already seen they have to play differently. And if they need to score 35 points to win a game, I don't know if they can do that without A.J. Brown. And they might have to do that this week.
It's amazing how much impact A.J. Brown has on this football team. He's really, I don't know if he's that good of a player. I mean, he is that good of a player, but there's a lot of good players in the league. I don't know if any wide receiver in the league has as much impact on their team as A.J. Brown does on the Eagles. I mean, they're a completely different offense without him.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain, obviously you start with Jefferson and Tyreek Hill has a tremendous impact on the way the Dolphins play and the Chiefs played before. But, people often point out the Chiefs continue to win without Tyreek. But I think if you see him on the field versus off the field, you saw Jefferson with the, whatever it was, 97-yard touchdown reception line. There's guys that are even better, but for this particular team, because they haven't been able to persevere as good, maybe you're right. But they need to persevere better. And maybe because they lost them so late in the week. But I've asked numerous guys from Nick Sirianni on down to Jalen Hurts yesterday, who said he knew he wasn't playing, and they're very close. So, from that standpoint, if he knew he wasn't playing, the coaches knew he wasn't playing. So they should have plenty of time to adjust the game plan. And why isn't Dallas Goedert involved? You could have made that excuse, and then Jalen kind of blew it up and said, no, I knew he wasn't playing. So why wasn't he more involved? Why didn't they do a better job persevering? They need to. That's where if you want to criticize the coaching staff, I think you start there. It's like, gotta have a better plan. Nobody likes Britton Covey more than me, but it's like they threw Britton Covey and A.J. Brown. All right, let's get the ball in Britton's hand. I love Britton. I'm glad he got a chance, and I think people got to see some of his ability creating separation and things like that. And I think he had 6 targets, 6 completions.
I think it was 23 yards, though, Johnny Mac. Unfortunately,
obviously not effective because everything was near the line of scrimmage, which is not necessarily a bad thing when AJ's out there in a situational standpoint. But and 2 of his receptions, he would have been 8 of 8, but 2 other receptions were pulled back by the illegal man downfield penalties. And those were, ironically, his two biggest plays. So not that would have been great, but 8 for 43 or something like that is a little bit better. But you see the lack of explosion. He's not getting downfield. Like AJ had a 67-yard reception in Brazil for a touchdown. You don't have that in the offense. And Jahan Dotson, I mean, I hopefully it's just he's still learning the offense. But I mean,
that's best case scenario. That's the truth.
Yeah, if you start to look at what he was in Washington, which is a bad organization, so hopefully he gets better. But this team hasn't been able to find a competent third receiver. Nick would argue with that, but I mean, he's talking about role players like Zach Pascal who can block and Olamide Zacchaeus, and all right, but when you need somebody to step up and at least persevere for AJ Brown, they haven't been able to find it. Whereas if you think about, as I mentioned with Kansas City, yeah, it looks different, but they're able to persevere with Tyreek Hill. Jefferson got hurt last year, and all of a sudden Jordan Addison steps up, and plays very effectively. Like, where is that? Where is that?
No doubt. Eagles going to have to rely on the run a little bit. John, before we break more into the offense, I do want to get into the defense. I think those are the biggest questions coming out of week 2. We talked about the pass rush. Forget pass rush for a second. What about the interior of that D-line? Coming into this game, how do you get those guys going? Is it just a matter of they got to play better? Is there situations Vic can put them in to kind of get them to play better? Because I'm mad about Bryce Huff too. I'm mad about the pass rush too. But as we pointed out earlier in the show, if you're getting gashed in the running game to the tune of 150 plus yards in the game, you're not going to be in position to pin your ears back and rush the passer as effectively as we would like to, especially with a guy like Bryce Huff. How do we do that? How do we fix that coming into this game? John, Alvin Kamara. And by the way, this doesn't look like the Alvin Kamara we thought it was going to be. This looks like the Alvin Kamara of a couple years ago, who was one of the best backs in the league. He's playing good football right now. What should be the game plan coming in here to get this defense on track and get them above really the bottom ranked defense in the league?
Yeah, number one, guys got to play better.
Yeah, that helps, right?
Starting with Jalen Carter. While everybody's hyper focused on Bryce Huff, I'm hyper focused on Jalen Carter for the reason I mentioned yesterday on the show. I'm not trying to, because I thought Bryce Huff was going to be a good signing for the Eagles. So I'm not trying to run away from that. He's played very poorly.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised how poorly he's played. But the reason I'm more focused on and he's got to get better. But the reason I'm more focused on Jalen Carter is he's supposed to be the guy they're building this defense on. And when he's not effective, and he has not been effective, there are flashes, but because he's got so much talent.
Yeah, but when a defense is built on you, it can't be flashes.
Exactly.
Flashes don't mean much when
I need consistency.
Exactly.
And he still shows up occasionally in the pass rush, and he'll still beat his man. And you'll say, wow, look at that. But again, the consistency isn't there. He's been terrible in run defense, which affects the pass rush. And Jordan Davis has not been good as well. I mean, these are the guys you're building on. And the Georgia guys, all the talk about the Philadelphia Bulldogs.
Yeah. I never want to hear that again.
I mean, are we going to keep drafting Georgia guys? I don't want to blame Georgia. It's not their fault, but, they were good templates. But we are where we are with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith and even Kaylee Ringo, if you want to throw him in there. Yeah. Not good. Not good. And in theory, you have a better defensive coordinator. But, and by the way, there are those that's where I'll say the positives. They've been good situationally, as goofy as it sounds. They're, again, very small sample size, so I even hesitate to throw this out there, but they are third in the NFL in third down defense after
No, you're
last
right.
year.
That has been the positive, and the red zone. I mean, which is
In the
where you're
red
going
zone, they're
next. Yeah.
fifth. They're fifth in the NFL. But they're fifth in the NFL in red zone defense, and they're still 27th in points per game. And which part of it was, and that's why the sample size doesn't matter, because the Green Bay game, you can, because of the field and all that crap, you kind of throw it out. And they only gave up 15 points until collapsing. So it wasn't like they were getting destroyed by the Falcons, although they were getting destroyed in the running game. With Bijan and Tyler Algier, pretty much doing what they wanted.
Yeah. He looked good too. Everybody's
Yeah, he's a good player.
he is a good player, but he was running all over us too, man.
Yeah, one of the reasons Bijan didn't get as many touches and Falcons fans were upset because the other guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have two good backs, but still, and they have a better offensive line than people think. But it's not good. It's not good. And part of it is schematic, because Vic is willing to give up some rushing yards to prevent the big plays in the pass. So, you could say, what's going to change? Well, we've seen this from a schematic standpoint. The way they handle the run is not going to change. So guys better start playing better.
John, I want to ask you real quick one last thing about that game, thinking about that Falcons game and just talking about how the defense can get back on track. You're right. The defense has been good in red zone. The defense has been good on third down. I've rewatched that damn 70-second drive, 65 second drive for 70 yards and a touchdown. What happens on a drive like how do you let Kirk Cousins just come out there? I mean, he went 58 yards in 3 plays, John. It was like 14 seconds. The Atlanta Falcons went from, do we have enough time to score, to we should slow this thing down so we don't give the ball back.
Yeah, Peyton.
Peyton. That's where I'm like, look, those weren't
down.
running downs, John. Those were passing downs. Those were clear passing downs. They got no pressure on Kirk Cousins, and the guy looked like, prime Peyton Manning out there shredding us for a 65-second drive. I thought that was really the most concerning part of the game. And that's why I was saying, forget bend but don't break. It's bend but eventually break. It seems like it always breaks in the wrong situation. How do you fix that? How do you stop that?
You stop it by catching the football at the other end. It's a complimentary game. No, I'm serious. I'm not even being. It's a complimentary game. And and that's the thing that frustrates the analytics people. It frustrates the coaching staff. They're trying, but momentum is one of those things that, certain people say it's not real. Well, I've been watching this game for a long time. It certainly seems real.
Oh, it's definitely real. You can't say momentum is not real. Momentum is very real.
When the air came out of the building, and the players, when Saquon dropped that football. Now, again,
watching that thinking, okay, we're done for the night. And then they have to go back out there and make a stop.
Yeah. And that's not an excuse for the defense, because, again, there's no law that says you can't pick up Saquon Barkley. You can't be a good teammate and pick up Saquon Barkley, because if one player makes a play on that drive defensively, nobody's talking about Saquon Barkley dropping the football. The Eagles win the game and they persevere and everything's copacetic. But, it is a complimentary game. They had given up 15 points. The air came out of the building. Momentum is real. So how do you stop it? You stop it by executing on the other side when you have a chance to win the game. But, somebody's got to step up in that situation. Nobody did. So it's fine to blame the defense as well. And it's even fun to blame Jalen Hurts for not understanding the situation and the ability to maybe be a little bit more cognizant of the fact he's got 3 more shots to get Jake Elliott into at least acceptable field goal range.
Yeah, I think they could have gotten it much closer, but I've been getting, I was hard on Jalen coming out of the game, and I do realize he played good enough to win the game, but I think, like I've said in the past, you got to take that in the NFL. If the ball is in your quarterback's hand with a chance to go and win in this league, that's all you can ask for. So, I wanted to see Jalen seize the moment there, but that doesn't excuse that he had a pretty good game overall. I will say, I did watch Greg Cosell over on Inside the Birds and his film breakdown, and he's concerned about Jalen John with climbing the pocket and rolling out to the right and not making some progress in that regard. Now, I will say, I did rewatch again the All 22, and Jalen, there was times when he did climb the pocket well, and he found a couple of his best throws actually were from climbing the pocket. But there was other times where, he did roll out, and Greg Cosell was kind of calling it out. He was the first guy I heard say Jalen actually played poorly in the game. Not many others said that other than that last interception. But just where you are on Jalen and what you've seen from him in the passing game. I know he's a great runner. I thought that was a positive thing, that he looked like a great runner again on Monday night. But just where you are on him in the passing game and taking steps forward with Kellen Moore in that regard.
I think he's a very good quarterback. That doesn't mean perfect. That doesn't mean there's not flaws, and probably his biggest flaw is just what you said. And it has been his biggest flaw for a long time. If you go back to 2021, that's what Todd Bowles did in Tampa to pretty much stymie the Eagles' offense, force him to roll right, flush him, cut off the field, limit the passing opportunities. And he knew at that time he wasn't comfortable rolling left. It was more just flushing right, and it was really, really limited. So he's improved. To your point, every quarterback, 100% of quarterbacks is more successful when they can climb the pocket in the passing game. 100%. There's nobody who's not more successful when they do that. That's the reason they're taught to do that. But it's obviously easier said than done. One, you need a clean pocket. You have to understand there is a time where you do have to flush. So, but generally, obviously, Jalen has one of the best offensive lines in the league. He's going to have an opportunity to climb that pocket more than most. And he doesn't do it enough. He still doesn't do it enough. And then you have the complicating factor of, oh, by the way, he makes some plays. He makes more plays than most people when he flushes. I always talk about Christian Ponder. I used to cover, he had that same problem. He would just default to flushing right every time. And he was a good athlete, but he wasn't a Jalen Hurts level athlete. And he couldn't shake it. And I think he was the 11th overall pick in the draft, and he was an abject failure. So he's improved, and that's the good thing. But he still needs to get better at it.
And I also think he's improved at the blitz, John. His blitz numbers are much better, or small sample size so far, but definitely much better this year.
Yeah, it has been better, and I'm surprised that teams haven't tried him a little bit more. So yeah, I have to see. I'm waiting for that Tampa game.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for.
That's a guy who's Jalen's 1-2 versus him in the last couple of years. 2 playoff losses coming to Todd Bowles' defense.
Yeah, so I'm gonna reserve judgment to that Tampa game, but I am surprised, and he has, as you said, been better. And by the way, he shut down a question about the blitz. For those people dunking on the certain reporter, Jalen answered the question off camera in a very deep and substantive way. He just didn't want to talk about it on the camera. So That's the kind of stuff people don't get to see.
Does Jalen give you guys kind of off the record times like that?
Not a ton, but in this
I never heard him
indication,
say that he did that.
no, he does it every once in a while, but not a ton. But in this instance, he did. He just didn't want to talk about it on the camera. So for everybody, because I saw it on social media a bunch, he answered the question. He just answered it off camera.
Yeah, good stuff. John, moving in, we got a bunch of super chats. I'm going to hit them before the end of the segment. Thank you all. Chris AM dropped another 50. Chris, I'm going to give you your thanks in a little bit, man. Thank you so much, everybody, for the support of this show. It's been tremendous. So thank you all. John, moving into the Saints game from an offensive point of view, how do you exploit this team? You talked about the defense in the past. They really have a pretty good defense over there in New Orleans. Picked off Dak Prescott a couple of times last week. If you're Kellen Moore, if you're Jalen Hurts coming into this game, where do you want to attack? What should be the game plan, especially if you're going to go a second week here without A.J. Brown?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence with this team and this offense without A.J. Brown until I see it. I mean, I got to see it. Hopefully the extra time enables them to come up with a better game plan that better utilizes Dallas Goedert, because that's, and Nick talks about it all the time. And the offense runs through AJ, Devontae, Dallas. Well, it's got to run through Devontae, Dallas, and then hopefully somebody, whether it's Brenton Covey or Jahan Dotson or whatever, has got to step up in that third spot. But Dallas has got to be number 2.
Yeah, man. And he wasn't last week at all. I mean,
didn't seem to be.
I mean, that last drive kind of skewed it too. He had one catch before that final drive. One catch.
Got to get him involved. And that was maybe my biggest disappointment of the game plan. And I don't necessarily get it. But everybody shut down as I said, Jalen completely shut it down, because he flat out said, I knew AJ wasn't playing. So there should have been plenty of time to tweak the game plan, because the original game plan was put in typically Tuesday, because it was a Monday game. It was put in Wednesday. AJ got hurt on Friday. So, you did have to shift it, and it didn't seem like they shifted it. And that's got to get better, I think, this week, number one. And, because you're going to have to score some points. I find it very hard to believe that the Saints are going to score points. So that means the Eagles are going to have to score points.
I'm pretty sure the Saints are going to score points. They are the highest scoring team in the NFL. I know it's only 2 weeks, but got to give credit to Clint Kubiak, John.
That 45.5 points per game.
I know, man. It's pretty
impressive. Now, I'm going the under with that.
Me too. I'll take the under with that as well.
Yeah. Any Bet US fans out there, if you get that
Although I don't know, man, this defense is struggling. Some could say maybe they exploit this defense even more than they did the Cowboys. Because, from the other side of it, John, I will say this. The Saints game plan coming into this game offensively, it's going to be the same game plan it was versus the Dallas Cowboys. Run it down their throat with Alvin Kamara and take advantage of the pass, the play action pass once it's set up from that. Alvin Kamara ran that ball all over the Cowboys, and Derek Carr had 11 completions. 11 completions in that game with 44 points on the board.
Yeah, they're a shot team.
Talk about
anybody, for those who don't know, Clint Kubiak is Gary Kubiak's son. Gary Kubiak is obviously, Mike Shanahan's sort of guy. So the Shanahan-Kubiak offense is the that's the Vic Fangio offense. That's the offense. That's the in vogue offense around the league. Sean McVay's template is set up on that. Kyle Shanahan, obviously, is set up on that. Sean has evolved it to include more pistol, but then you start looking at the tree, Kevin Stefanski runs it from his time with Gary Kubiak in Minnesota. That's where Clint comes from. And obviously Clint knows it from his dad. Matt LaFleur. The tentacles of this offense are all over the league. And the Saints are doing it as good as anybody, at least early in the season. And it's a shot offense. And they have a guy who can run past everybody in Shaheed.
Yeah, that dude is. Watch the tape on him, Eagles fans, last week. He took the top off that Dallas defense a couple of times.
Yeah, I think he's averaging 24 yards of reception, maybe.
Yeah, he's a good player too.
Now he's not. Yeah, he's not a volume guy. He's a shot guy.
But he's got that big playability, no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, you're talking about, like I just said, Derek Carr completed 11 passes. Obviously he had a couple big plays in there. So with Alvin Kamara, who can beat you underneath in the running game, in the screen game, some of those flip passes that Derek Carr gave him, you have Shaheed over the top. I mean, they got a good. They have a.
Yeah,
and then
there's another one. There's another one who's a better receiver than a certain someone.
I think Alvin Kamara is one of the best. I mean, dual threat backs in the league, no doubt.
Yeah, he
has been for a while now. I think he had an injury a little bit, like a couple years ago.
Yeah,
kind of slowed down.
He's been banged up.
But look, to his credit, he looks like the same guy now. After he's now back in rhythm, he's looked really good to start the season.
Yeah, he's a very good player when he's healthy, and he's healthy right now. So that's what you're dealing with. Very good offense.
Yeah.
And you hope Derek Carr's been a little bit inconsistent at times, and you hope he's having a bad day. It's like the pitcher without his good stuff. But if he's on, you got troubles. So with Kamara, 81, 81, 81, 83. That's what his first 4 years receiving catches. 47, 57, some injury years. And then last year is back up to 75.
What's he have through 2 games this year? I think 7. Yeah, 7 receptions for 92. I got it here.
Yeah.
And he's also got.
And look at the yards, 7 for 92.
Right.
Yeah.
15 yards, 14 yards.
That guy's a legit receiving threat out of the backfield instead of a made up threat.
Yeah, and it's also run after the catch where he'll catch it underneath.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't catch up to him. The dude,
running back?
He's so elusive. He's really an amazing player to watch. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. Always has been. He's a very, very talented player. So, look, tall task this weekend, everybody. I mean, this is also, as John pointed out, momentum is a thing in the NFL, John. They just thrashed our other NFC foe in the Dallas Cowboys in their arena. Now they're back home. They have momentum.
Well, that can work both ways. They could be feeling themselves and
they could come back to earth.
Yeah. So hopefully, they don't play their A game. It's going to be one of those. Without AJ, you're going to need New Orleans to play their B or C game, and you're going to have to play your A game.
Yeah, so hopefully the Eagles can do that. John, let's get to a couple super chats here. Got some good ones from our loyal viewers. Thanks, everybody, in the chat for your super chats and your contributions. Super chats always do go to the front. So preparing here for this week 3 game, let's take some supers from our good, loyal supporters in the chat. Jason A-Team checks in. I think this was a little bit earlier. He was talking about the setup. He says, this setup with the coaches, you can see the disconnect between players and coaches on the field in the games. We are not contenders, but I'm still hopeful. Jason, keep those spirits up, man. It's only week 2. Eagles can get this thing back on the rails, but we have talked about the setup, John. Do you think you've seen any disconnect between players and coaches?
I don't know if there's maybe Devin and Vic.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, I think that was your first inside look
as far as as far as the guys who play, it's not necessarily about a disconnect between the players and coaches for me. It's about the overall setup with the coaching staff and limiting Nick Sirianni to a certain extent, deep banging him, whatever you want to call it, doesn't make sense to me. I mean, you hire somebody to be in charge. If you don't think you should be in charge, then you fire him and move on and hire somebody you think you should be. But the head coach should always be allowed to do what the head coach wants to do in all 32 cities every single time. And I don't think that's the case in Philadelphia right now. And I don't think that's a good setup, and it's not changing. So until after the season, if Jeffrey decides to do it in a more conventional way.
Yeah, we'll see if he ends up doing that. Angel Martinez checks in. Angel, thank you, man. You dropped 2 super chats, so I'll get to both of them right now. Angel says, I think the offense has to play defense. Keep the ball away from this explosive Saints offense, run the ball, and get first downs. Angel, I like your game plan, man. I think you got to try and control the clock the best you can.
Yeah, well, he's right.
Johnny Mac doesn't like that, but
I don't dislike.
Well, normally you say, "Tell me what the score is in the fourth quarter." I'll tell you what the time of possession is.
Well, no, that's true. That's always true.
Yeah,
the never ending. That's always true. But if I firmly believe, and I used to have this discussion. Jody used to be obsessed with the kickoffs and winning the coin toss.
Yeah.
And the Eagles always deferring. Well, normally at the time, the Eagles had the better team almost every week. They went through that stretch where they won every game. It was absurd. It was the best stretch in Eagles history. And when you're the best team, you don't worry about shit like that. When you're not the best team, you try to shorten the game.
Right.
And that can start with the coin toss. If you win it, take the ball. Hope you go on a 7-8 minute drive. Shorten the game. I have no problem with that thought process. My run pass ratio thing is about the dumbness of, we're going to run the ball before the game 32 times and we're going to pass it 30.
Right.
That comes through. You could have the best intentions of going out and trying to shorten game against the Saints. And if you're down 14-0, well, then out the window and you're trying to catch up. But you should try to shorten the game. And to be in this position week 3 is disappointing probably for the Eagles.
Yep, no doubt. Angel follows it up with another similar point. He says, am I the only one who thinks the O puts the D in bad positions, whether it be the turnovers or going 3 and out fast and putting them back out with not a lot of rest? I mean, Angel, there's definitely been instances of that. And I will say that's something to watch this weekend, John. This Saints defense has 4 interceptions and a fumble recovery. They've turned the ball over 5 times. Eagles obviously have had 4 turnovers early in the year here as well. So the turnover battle is going to be something to watch this week.
Well, that's always, I mean, look, you could, that Chip Kelly was the best example of that. I mean, constant tempo, never knowing when to, put the dampener on, just always going. He would always put the defense in bad situations. But with the Eagles, man, last week, that was not the case. I mean, I know I was counting it up during the game. It was going to be my lead story if they didn't blow the game. From the fourth quarter, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 plays, ending with the Hurts tush push. And that started in the third quarter. And Atlanta had the ball for 4 plays, and that was the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson hit that stopped them on 4th down. And then the Eagles took it for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So they had ran 25, 26 plays. And if you go back to the third quarter, 28 or 29 plays to Atlanta's 4, and held the football forever. And the defense gave up 65 seconds. So that was not the case. I mean, that offense dominated the fourth quarter. It did not finish on the second drive. And if they would have finished,
Kirk Cousins got 65 seconds. And boy, did he make the most of them.
I mean, 27-4 plays. and that's how the
That was
defense
fourth quarter,
responded.
27-4.
Yeah.
And the Falcons got a touchdown.
Before the Falcons' last drive, yeah.
Yeah.
And, they were threatening to run out the entire clock if Saquon catches the ball. It would have been.
That was the game. That was when I thought the Eagles ended it, when they had the 17-play drive and they took back the lead. And I'm like, it wasn't over, obviously. They were still in striking
No,
distance.
that's why
the Eagles took control of that game and the momentum was.
Yeah, and then also when CJ made that hit on
right,
Bijan,
big hit there.
Yeah, you could see the desperation from Atlanta. It was 4th and 1 from their own 39. And they had just given up that long 17-play drive, 17 plays that took 9 minutes and 34 seconds. 9 minutes and 34 seconds. And they were on the field on 4th and 1, and they went for it. And Chauncey made that hit, and the game should have been over. Then the drive where Saquon dropped the ball was 3:59 and 11 plays.
Yeah.
And if he catches that, it ends up, being the entire game. They run out the clock.
Right. Another minute and a half. That would have been 5.5 minutes.
So they completely dominated from a play standpoint and a timing standpoint.
Yeah, and I remember watching the game and saying Atlanta's in trouble here because their defense was on the field for 9.5. And then they went out and had a 5-play drive that was 1:09 and turned the ball over on downs. And I'm like, Eagles could ice this game right here. That was before this. That was the drive that Saquon had to drop. I thought that's where the Eagles were going to ice it.
And they did. They did essentially ice the game if he catches the ball.
Yeah, so they didn't. But let's get to our next super chat from Chris A.M. Look at this, Johnny Mac. A double 50 burger. He drops. He says, because my fellas, 50 burger a piece. Hey, but for real, so much respect. Love the show. The segment is the best every day. And with all the guests you guys bring in, Zander and J-Mac, we enjoy it. Take care. God bless you all. Go Birds. Go Birds, Chris. God bless you too, man. Thank you for the support of the show this morning. I don't think I've ever seen you in the chat. Maybe you drive a lot when you're watching or whatever it is. I know not everybody can contribute in the chat, but hopefully I'll see you more, Chris. Appreciate your super chats today, man. Nick R checks in, Johnny Mac. He says, I rewatched the all 22 as well. I think Jalen stepped up well in the pocket and guys just weren't getting much separation and he rolled out and made plays. Nick, I think there was a nice combination of the two. There were times when Jalen stepped up. There were also other times I thought he scrambled a little bit early, prematurely. You got to let some of those routes develop more and look for your man downfield. But I do think, John, I watched Dallas Goedert a little bit on tape. He didn't create much separate. I know he didn't get many targets, but he was struggling to get any separation out there and be a viable threat in the passing game, I think, early.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of the Goddard stuff.
It's weird, right? I mean, look, it's one thing to say, okay, well, they have AJ and Devontae. He's not going to get that many catches.
I mean, it is Jesse
AJ
Bates.
Dowling got nothing.
Jesse Bates, who was defensive player of the week, by the way.
Yeah, well.
That he's in the conversation to be the best safety in the game. You have Justin Simmons as well, who's at least a playmaker. So you did have some issues in the middle of the field that you typically probably wouldn't against other teams. So maybe that was a part of it. But yeah, very disappointed. As I said before, that Dallas wasn't more involved in the offense. And yeah, I didn't like the game plan in lieu. A difficult situation. And like I said, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt to the point I asked everybody, how difficult it is to redo or tweak the game plan. And they all downplayed it. They weren't using it as an excuse. And I applaud that, but then that means it was a bad game plan from my perspective.
No doubt. We'll see how the Eagles respond this week, John. I think that defense is going to be the key this week, obviously, with the run defense going up against Alvin Kamara. They got to get that back on track, man. You can't be the 32nd run defense in the NFL and expect to win games. Not versus competent offenses.
No. Should have won the game though.
Should have, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And now we're 1-1, and you're coming out of it now, going into a week 3 game where you have a tough matchup. And the reality is, they are the worst run defense in the NFL right now. You got to fix that.
Well, it's ironic. Look, they went in. You know, we talk about the plan offensively. So if you talk about the plan defensively, yeah, your goal is probably focused on. It's always focused on the passing game, obviously. Now, in the they were not successful, obviously, against Bijan Robinson, and Algier, except for the 4th down play we just talked about. That was a hell of a play by CJ, and should have sealed the deal. But you know, they lost the game. They won the game with that shitty run support, essentially. And they lost the game at 65. They weren't running the ball when they lost the game. It's a very weird game. Like, for the vast majority of the game, all right, they couldn't stop the run. You're right. But they were stopping the pass, maybe because they stopped the run. They didn't feel the need to pass because they couldn't stop the run. And then when there's very little time on the clock and no timeouts, and everybody in the building knows they're going to have to throw the ball, and the running game's off, the positive of the Atlanta offense is out of the equation because of the game situation. The passing defense falls apart, which, and when I said about the pass rush as a whole, which holds true. You know, if you're not effective on 1st and 2nd downs, you're not going to have an impact in the pass rush on 3rd and short. And that was the case for 58 minutes. It wasn't the case for the final 2 minutes, where everybody as I said, everybody knew they were throwing the football. And they couldn't get any kind of pass rush or any kind of coverage. And it was disappointing.
Disappointing to say the least. I was blowing up at my TV. I'm like, there's no way we're losing this game. And then I watched it slip out of our fingers right before my very eyes. John, a couple more super chats I want to rip through here. Appreciate all the support this morning. You guys have been crushing it on the super chats, the likes, and all the comments. So thank you all. Terry Hayes checks in. I'm very worried about this upcoming game. Going to be a tough game. Go Birds. Go Birds, Terry. Appreciate the support, man. No doubt this is going to be an tough upcoming game. And the Eagles got to, do their best to get back on track here, coming off, following up going against a Saints team that's red hot and just throttled the Cowboys. So no doubt a tough game. Prince says it was Justin Simmons on Dallas, Mr. PFF, LOL. So he's trolling you. He says it was Justin Simmons covering Dallas a lot of the times.
Oh, I didn't even understand. Oh, yeah. All right. Hey. They shut him down. Jesse Bates was player of the week, though, I believe.
Well, our 2 safeties were a liability last week, John. Gardner John. I mean, everybody's talking about the big stuff. He got shredded by Darnell Mooney on that. That attempt at a tackle was tough to watch. It was tough.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how somebody can make that stop as a tackler.
I know,
in that situation, and then So the consistency isn't there with CJ, and that was that was kind of the issue. He makes plays, but he's not the most consistent guy, and that is probably going to continue. And that's a little bit frustrating. You'd prefer a little bit more consistency.
It is hard to make that tackle, by the way, on Darnell Mooney in open space. So I don't want to come down too hard on him, but it was a pitiful effort. Trucker Beans checks in $5. Trucker, thank you, man. He says, John said it all summer, followed the money, and that's where the production needs to be. We're an offensive team. No one is getting paid on defense. Yeah, Trucker, I will say this, though. Quite a bit of first-round draft picks on that defense, man. I mean, you're talking about Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, 17-5
Yeah,
for Bryce
well,
Huff.
yeah, those guys are
Josh
supposed
Sweat,
to produce. Yeah.
Look, Nakobe Dean's a 3rd-round draft pick. You paid money for C.J. Gardner. So I get it. I do think you're right. Darius Slay's getting paid good money. I do think you're right. It needs to come offensively, but it's not like we got all scrubs. I mean, they spent a lot of draft picks on that defense, man. If they don't pan out, then it's a drafting issue. We drafted the wrong dudes, and the defense isn't good because of it. So, but John, your response to Trucker.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but well, to your point, those are significant assets. When the 9th pick in the draft was Jalen Carter, the 13th pick in the draft was Jordan Davis, the 30th pick in the draft was Nolan Smith. You did pay $51 million to Bryce Huff. A 3rd-round pick for a linebacker in the Philadelphia Eagles world is a significant asset. Significant. So yeah, and should they have paid Xavier McKinney? Should they have gone higher? Maybe. But Green Bay did pay him a lot of money. That was plan A, and they shifted to CJ after that. And he got significant money. So they put plenty of assets into the defense, maybe a little bit differently. But right now, when you're looking at those draft picks, they're not performing to the level they need to perform pretty much across the board, with the exception of Quinyon Mitchell is also a 1st-round pick. So, and I think, I don't want to. Quinyon's been good for a rookie, but he's had his problems as well, which I don't have a problem with. Everybody should expect.
My sights are set on all the other 1st-round draft picks that haven't done shit before I get mad at Quinyon.
Yeah, you expect startup costs like most rookies. He's not the best tackler in the world. Like most rookie cornerbacks, he's not the best in run support, which affects the overriding theme. But as a coverage guy, which is what you want, he's been very good, very natural. But man, the Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, man, they got to get it going. And for me, Jalen's a bigger issue than Jordan. And I know people will see it the other way. But when you're building your defense on somebody, he better perform. And I haven't seen that yet from Jalen Carter, at least consistently. You see the flash of the pass rush, but the consistency hasn't been there from play to play.
Yeah, and the chat has given a nickname for Bryce Huff that he will get now until he proves otherwise. It's Bryce Puff, no longer Bryce Huff. Powder Puff Bryce Huff.
I'll tell you
he better show up, man. He's got to show up. John, let's get to our commercial break. Hopefully BLG is with us. He might be blowing us off a 2nd day in a row here, Johnny Mac. I got no BLG. Normally he's in by now. We'll take our commercial break. Hopefully we'll have BLG. If we don't have BLG, we're going to talk about those 2 guys, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis.
Oh, boy, I didn't realize what time it is. Come on, Brandon. All right, I'm going to text him.
All right, let's get to our commercial break. Birds 365 will be right back with or without BLG. We're going to bring you guys great Eagles content coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.